Hi everyone, we are Group I and we are also ANDYS researchers commissioned by the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Our aim is to assess, from an international business perspective, what institutional environment, development conditions, and potential challenges Singapore presents for Australian enterprises in the current context of globalization. The development of Singapore is built upon international trade, cross-border investment, and global financial activities. Also, the Singapore government plays a significant role in institutional design and policy coordination, ensuring relatively stable market operations and clear regulatory frameworks. Firstly, from a global perspective, we'll analyze the political, economic, and legal system in globalization. Next, we'll assess Singapore's economic development and human development level. Finally, we'll analyze the cultural distance between Singapore and Australia. Next, I'll answer the first question. Globalization refers to the deepening connections among countries in terms of goods, capital, and business activities, making it easier to organize market and production activities across borders. Because of that, enterprises can more easily enter overseas markets, and opportunities of trade and investment increase. Also, enterprises more frequently distribute procurement, production, financing, and sales across multiple countries. The domestic market of Singapore is limited in scale. Beyond attracting foreign investment, its domestic enterprises have also been active in investment abroad. Singaporean firms saw a significant increase in the scale of their outward FDI after the late 90s, with investment destinations covering multiple Asian economies and markets such as the US. Singapore's political system emphasizes collectivism and social order, making policy stability even more crucial in the context of globalization. When entering a country's market, enterprises assess political risks based on whether the system tends to frequent adjustments. In this environment, Singapore places greater emphasis on policy stability and consistency in implementation. The WGI measures national governance in dimensions such as political stability, government effectiveness, regulatory quality, and the rule of law, and Singapore has consistently ranked among the top. Also, globalization has imposed stronger constraints on political systems through international rules. With the increase in cross-border capital activities, Singapore takes international regulatory standards into more consideration when formulating policies, especially in the financial sector. Singapore has the MAS as its central bank and integrated financial regulator, which make it more focused on coordinating with international regulatory rules and achieving financial stability goals. The market plays a major role in resource allocation in Singapore, but the government retains a guiding and coordinating role, making it closer to a mixed economy. The impact of globalization on Singapore is first reflected in the fact that its economy has become more open. With the acceleration of trade and capital flows, the proportion of total trade to GDP has remained extremely high for a long time, attracting foreign investment, serving multinational enterprises, and integrating into the global value chain have gradually transformed from policy choices into an integral part of economic system. At the same time, globalization has also transformed the business practices of Singaporean enterprises. With the increase in cross-border opportunities, Singaporean enterprises are increasingly venturing overseas, and foreign investment has gradually become routine, with investment destinations becoming more diverse. This indicates that enterprises no longer view the domestic market as their sole stage, but directly participate in the transnational network. Singapore's legal system belongs to the common law system, emphasizing contracts, property rights, and judicial enforcement. It has the SICC, which specifically handles international commercial disputes, and the SIAC is also an important international arbitration institution with a high proportion of international cases. For Australian enterprises, this means that when entering the Singapore market, they'll face legal challenges that must be addressed in advance. The first challenge comes from contracts and transaction arrangements. In Singapore, the legal system highly relies on contract terms and judicial enforcement, which means that Australian enterprises must invest more effort in contract design during the entry stage. The second is the relatively high compliance costs before entry. Singaporean law emphasizes clear rules and strict enforcement. Enterprises often have to complete a large amount of compliance preparations before entering the market, thereby increasing upfront costs for Australian enterprises. The last is the cooperation model and risk control. Enterprises should be more cautious in choosing governance structures and cross-border cooperation to avoid the leakage of technology, knowledge, or business secrets. So Australian enterprises need to adopt more formal cooperation arrangements and stricter internal control. That is all of my question, and let's welcome my teammate to introduce the second question.
Thanks for my teammates. Next, I will answer the question 2. In the context of globalization, Singapore has emerged as a key strategic hub for Australian enterprises seeking to expand into Asian markets, serving as Southeast Asia's financial, trade, and innovation center. This part employs core metrics from international business frameworks to empirically analyze Singapore's economic and human development levels using authoritative data. Singapore is globally recognized as a highly developed market economy, with its core economic characteristics reflected through its global standing across multiple key indicators. This study's analytical framework employs gross national income (GNI) per capita as its foundational metric, utilizing purchasing power parity (PPP) to adjust for price differences across economies. Using the Atlas method, current US dollar, Singapore's GNI per capita reached 74,750 in 2024, securing the nation's position as the world's ninth highest. This figure not only far exceeds the World Bank's threshold for high-income economies, 49,300, but also places Singapore alongside developed economies in Northern Europe and North America within the global high-income cohort. It directly reflects that Singaporeans' actual purchasing power ranks among the world's highest. From the perspective of the relationship between prices and purchasing power, using the United States as the benchmark, Singapore's purchasing power parity in 2024 stands at 0.35. The chart shows Singapore ranks very high globally in PPP metrics. Under this statistical method, Singapore's GNI per capita reached 126,190 in 2024. Over the past decade, its PPP-adjusted GNI has demonstrated a sustained and steady upward trend with minimal fluctuations. As a high-income economy, this stable and sustained growth indicates that Singapore has entered the typical stage of a mature, developed economy. Its economic structure is highly stable, which shows that residents' real purchasing power continues to strengthen and living standards are steadily improving. Additionally, Singapore's GDP growth rate reached 4.39% in 2024, surpassing the average growth rate of high-income economies, approximately 2.1%. This achievement breaks the prevailing interval of low growth rates among high-income economies, aligning closely with Singaporeans' highly efficient economic structure, robust foreign trade, and competitive advantages in financial services. The following section will assess Singapore's human development. According to the Human Development Report 2025 released by the UNDP, Singapore's HDI value for 2023 stands at 0.946, ranking 13th globally. This represents an improvement of one position from its 14th place ranking in 2022, placing it within the group of countries with very high human development. Singapore is ranked alongside nations such as Iceland and Norway in the world's top tier. This reflects Singapore's comprehensive advancement in social development, public service, educational quality, and living standards, establishing it as one of the world's most comprehensively developed nations. And it further examines the relative priorities of these two metrics in Australian companies' location decision, providing rigorous decision-making guidance for regional business expansion. And based on the above analysis, I believe that for Australian enterprises, Singapore's economic development indicators serve as the core basis for decision-making, while human development indicators should function as supporting conditions for their decisions. The two form a complementary relationship. Economic development indicators serve as decisive decision-making references because they directly address the core question of whether Australian business can profit in Singapore, with their priority reflected in multiple aspects. Considering market demand alignment, Singapore's high-end consumer market continues to expand its demand for Australian products such as wine and health supplements. According to data from the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, Australian exports of health supplements to Singapore grew by 22% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2024 alone, a growth directly benefiting from Singapore's high purchasing power. Secondly, Singapore's free port policy and daily foreign exchange trading volume exceeding $615 billion effectively mitigate the impact of its high cost of living. As a mature market economy ranked second globally for ease of doing business, Singapore offers a stable institutional environment and efficient operational foundation. Business registration takes just 1 day, eliminating the policy volatility risks common in transitioning economies.
Hi everyone, today I will assess the cultural distance between Singapore and Australia using two case studies. We will also analyze if their cultures are becoming more similar or different. We will use two main frameworks, Hofstede's cultural dimension theory and House textual communication theory. Let's start with theory. There are 6 key dimensions, and here are the biggest differences between the two countries. The Singapore power distance is high. 74 is hierarchical top-down decisions, but Australia is low. 36 is that management employees participate. The Singapore is teamwork and group harmony is collectivist, but Australia focuses on personal competency. The Singapore is long-term orientation, plans for the future. Australia is focused on frequently results, step-by-step goals. Other dimensions, Singapore values work-life balance and formal rules, while Australia is more competitive and cultural. Singapore also tolerates change well, but Australia like their rules. Then, how's contextual communication theory? Their theory look at how people communicate. Singapore is a high-contact culture. People rely on context and body language. They avoid direct conflicts, preferring compromise. Australia is a low-contact culture. People say what they mean directly. In business, they raise objections openly to solve problems. All in all, the cultural distance between Singapore and Australia is above average. The core differences are in power distance, individualism, collectivism, and long-term orientation. This affect how business manage teams, communicate, and cooperate across borders. And for more similar or disparate, we need to double-size discussion. Firstly, there are similarities growing. To start with, business rules integration. Both are WTO members. They follow the same accounting and management standards, so their cross-border investment and contract are very similar. Second, industrial cooperation. Singapore strengthens and Australia's complement each other. They have formed a shared professional culture that blends data and innovation. Then, in-grid culture, a large number of Singapore's population is Chinese, with Malaysians and Indians too. Australia has much immigrants, such as from Asia. These diverse groups bring cultural exchange. Second, less discussion, more disparate, but core differences stay strong. Firstly, values rooted in history. Singapore's collectivism comes from Confucian harmony first, while Australia's individualism comes from its foreigner spirit. These don't change easily with globalization. Second, power distance gaps. Singapore's elite makes decisions, while Australia teams have no class barriers. Employees join in decision making. Then, result-driven orientation. Simple has few resources, so it plans long-term. Australia has plenty of resources, so it focuses on short-term gains. So we get a conclusion. Through critical analysis, the surface-level business culture is becoming increasingly similar, while the core values are disappearing. Factors like history, social structure, and resource keep differences in power distance and long-term origin alive. These differences will keep affecting cross-border business for a long time.
This is all of our presentation. Thank you for watching, and here are our references.